So for the last 2 weeks, James and I have been working on a document that we're excited and proud to bring to you. You know, we've been working on the personal brand aspect of a TA leader. We've broken it into 9 key areas that makes it really tangible and tactical to follow for anybody, any TA leader, to elevate their personal brand. We thought we'd start here because we think a rising tide raises all ships. At the macro level, we think it's important to help TA leaders be taken more seriously, to be appreciated, and if we can help increase the authority, the gravitas, and the positioning of what you're bringing as a professional, we think that's a great place to start to really lean into our mission.
Yeah, talent acquisition leaders are experts in what they do. But when I talk to talent acquisition leaders, they don't feel like they're treated like experts. So we want to help all of you build your personal brand so that you can get the respect you deserve. So the document in question, which will show you some sneak peeks and some ideas around it, it is for free, absolutely ready to download. Just go to peoplemba.com. That is where you're going to get that document. And if you're watching this in 2 weeks, you'll get more documents, because this whole project about helping TA leaders get their seat at the table is not just this talk fest where we're talking about big ideas. We're trying to bring you as many tangible, actionable to-do lists, scripts, guides, support documents to help you get the job done. That's the whole ethos, the whole mission of peoplemba.com. Brian and I are bringing it together, and that's what we want to bring to you.
For TA leaders who are ready to get their seat at the table. The People MBA. Subscribe at peoplemba.com for access to all the guides, templates, and other tools. This episode is being brought to you by Happy Dance Career Sites and Employer Brand Labs. So visit them, I guess. Thank you for calling the People MBA. Please leave your message and get on with the rest of your day, I guess.
Hi, James and Brian. Sarah Fell here with Grand Living Talent Acquisition. I was calling to see if you could explain to me how building a personal brand is beneficial to me as a TA leader. Thanks so much. Looking forward to the show.
It's interesting we're going to talk about personal brand. I'm absolutely freezing in London at the moment, James, and it makes me think, I wonder how my personal brand is perceived as we're about to talk about this.
Oh my goodness. I think about that all the time. Like I am so sure I have the metaphorical spinach in my teeth of my brand 24/7. Like I'm so sure that I've done said something dumb that people are like, yeah, James, huh? Maybe. So I think there's that fear everybody has.
So not to put you on the spot, but what do you think your personal brand is? Before we get into it, I'm just interested. How do you see you?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, first off, your hourly for therapy is way low. I think this could be challenging. And I guess do accept my insurance. But beyond that, look, I'll tell you what I want my brand to be. And if anybody's listening goes, no, James, you have so missed the mark. It is sad. You've put the dart into the wall, on the side of the dartboard. I want to be known as someone who is always thinking about employer brand and trying to bring it to as many people as possible, making it accessible and valuable to as many people as possible. And that means being willing to defy convention, being willing to tell truth to power, being willing to be a little salty, to say something true, to get people to change their mind. But hopefully, and this is the big question, it's done with love and expectation that I want recruiting and talent acquisition to simply be as good as I know that they can be. So hopefully that's how people see me. But let's be fair. We're professional branders. We're never 100% on that sort of stuff.
No, I don't think you're too far away there. I definitely see you as somebody who's obsessed with employer brand and isn't afraid to comment and give you your true opinion. And sometimes not everyone's going to agree with that, but I think the world needs it. Do you know what I mean? I think that's fair enough. And you've always got something to say, that's for sure. But I reckon you're
for better, for worse.
You're the high energy version of the Lennon and McCartney partnership with Carver here, mate.
Well, so I'll take Paul McCartney. I will take the Paul McCartney side if you're taking the Lennon side of that. So, what
As
do you
long as that doesn't mean
think?
I'm going to get shot soon, that's fine.
Well, stay out of New York City if that's okay. Too soon? No? Okay, moving on. What do you think your personal brand is, Brian?
Oh, it's funny actually because I'm going through a bit of a sort of transition of 20 years of running a employer brand agency, and I'm now sort of focused in a tech company. But what I've been sort of thinking through is I can't employer brands in my DNA, talent attraction and business strategy is in so I guess like you, all it can do is reflect on what you hope it is.
Hmm.
Because I spend so long thinking about talent attraction, business strategy, and employer brand and candidate experience, I hope and think and want to be known for somebody who is quite intentional and thoughtful about putting new ideas out there, um, and quite generous with that because I've always thought if you've got something good and you can forward the industry, then let's put it out there and see what happens. I don't know. It's an interesting one
Yeah.
because we're about to give advice on how people build their personal brand, but it does just demonstrate, if nothing else, starting here, that sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, and you do
Certainly.
need to sort of stop, reflect, and be really intentional about how you approach this stuff.
Yeah. So, okay. So that really does beg the question. It sets up the conversation because
Mm.
we're talking about we hope our employer brands or see, and this is my biggest challenge. I'm going to say employer brand so much because it's the natural,
Yeah.
like I've got tongue muscle memory in that one. About personal brands,
Mm.
we got to define it because it's such a fuzzy term. It's such a, what do we mean by that? Could be anything. And let's be fair, LinkedIn is filled with people who want to help people promote their own personal brand on LinkedIn or social media. So let's find some clarity. What and how would you talk about what a personal brand is?
For me, it's how you are consistently showing up, and therefore how you are perceived. But I guess the benefit of it is that I think your personal brand is leverage. It's how you win
Mm,
trust. It's how you get attention. And that can be good and bad. And how you access the people that really matter inside an organization. Um, how you further your career, and I would start there. What about you?
yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think the idea of leverage is like where I would underline that and get a big old highlighter and say
Yeah.
this is why it's useful and how it's valuable and how you care about it and how to think about it. But I think fundamentally it's the promise you make. It's what you it's how you self-create. It's a tool for self-creation, I guess, more than anything else. It's saying, look, TA leaders across the world have 90% the same set of skills anywhere you go. What is up with you? What are you bringing to the table? Who do you want to be? How do you want to be seen? How do you want people to perceive your value? So it is a
Mhm.
intentional way for you to decide where you aren't just waiting to be told who you are. You are trying to decide who you are and the value you bring to the world, from your own point of view.
And you'll relate to this in the world of TA and employer brand, where you hear the words "your authentic self" and "bring your
Oh,
whole self to work." And I think what's missed on some people is actually it can be intentional, it can be by design, and it needs to also be fit for purpose. I think everybody wears a sort of mask, if you like, not to get too
yeah,
sort of meta and deep, but ultimately driving a career, furthering an agenda, fighting for budget, making friends and influencing people who are usually more senior than yourself takes a intentional and purposeful approach to personal brand, which I think
yeah,
this is why we need to start here. And if we can help people just stop and think and then design a personal brand that's fit for their purposes, I think on the macro level we might just take a little step further towards what we're trying to do here, James.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful to remember that every one of your bosses or leaders or execs, or however you want to do it, they didn't like wake up one day and find themselves in the CFO, CHRO role. Like this isn't a talking head song. Like, how did I get here? This is simply, these are people with ambition and who made the choice, who they wanted to be in these roles. And they built their own personal brand to get there. This isn't an idea that we're saying, here's a trick on how to get smarter or better. This is how great work within a political organization, which is what a company is incredibly political, no matter where you work. This is how the best possible work gets done, defining your brand, because that's everybody else above you has already defined theirs.
So, do you think it's fair to say that to be a successful TA leader with all of the political, logistical, commercial, human challenges of what it takes to be a good TA leader, do you think it's fair enough to say it's not good enough to be great at the job, at the day job? Like, this is an essential component of being effective and influential at the strategic level. Is that what we're saying?
I think so. I think, can you do good work without a personal brand, without thinking about your personal brand? Yes. Is it like 10 times harder? Yes. Like it's like saying, do
Yeah.
you want square wheels or round wheels? The round wheels are your personal brand. If you invest, you're going to get it done faster. You're going to get it done easier. And let's be fair, the word easier and TA leader is almost never said in the same breath. So, that's nice when you hear that sort of thing. If it's an easier way to be effective, that's really what it's about. So,
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with a lot of TA leaders over the years, and I've seen, some make it look easy, and they sort
yes.
of, they swan into a room, they command attention, and you can just tell they've worked some stuff out where
Yeah.
if you play the game, which a lot of this is, it doesn't just open the right doors, it makes the doors swing open, and, life is so much easier, So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I think it is fair to say it's not enough to just talk about what you've done. You need to show how your work directly aligns with the goals of senior leaders and how it impacts commercially or furthers the agenda of the organization that are already existing priorities. And when you start to think like that, and you start to reflect on, like, am I doing that right now? Well, maybe I am, but I'm not showing up and showing off those things. Then, maybe there's just a couple of little tweaks and refinements that can make a huge difference. And if people can get even just those little ideas and nuggets out of what we're talking about today, I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think it's crucial to remember that there's not one way to do it. There's not, not everybody is this charismatic leader that everybody go oohs and ahs. Not everybody is well, I almost said Jeff Bezos. That's probably not the most charismatic leader I could think of. I think, or
That's
Steve
what came
Jobs
to
looks.
mind.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. No, I think more of a Steve Jobs, who I think someone more like, even in his way, Mark Zuckerberg, for a particular community, he has that charismatic kind of approach. People go, ooh, what's he doing? That's interesting. I don't think that's the only way to get it done. I think there are a lot of ways to build a personal brand that opens the doors, that creates that leverage you just talked about. But I think it all comes down to intentionality. You have to decide, looking at your own strengths, who you are, what you're trying to achieve, who do you want to portray yourself? How do you want to, what part of you do you want to bring to the table that's going to get it all done? Because honestly, without this kind of intervention, without your decision about how you want to be seen, spoiler, someone's going to do it for you. And it's not going to be to your benefit. They're going to pigeonhole you and say, this is who you are and this is what you're all about. And you're stuck. So it's really about getting that lever to tell you what you're all about. Say you're not just filling space, you're not just filling time, you're actually building something within this company. And I think if you understand that the company doesn't see that you are a builder, the TA function is generally seen as a builder. It's filling the boxes, it's doing the rote work. If you can be intentional about showing that value and showing how you are building something, it changes the way people see you. It changes the way people value you, and it changes, honestly, why they come to you and talk to you, what they think you can bring to the table, and they value you just very, very differently.
So, I mean, every organization's different, isn't it? And we'll talk about that in a second. But do you think there's biases and sort of misconceptions in most organizations? Like, do you see commonality when you go inside of these organizations? Because quite often the TA functions misunderstood, and you find yourself having to translate what's going on to
Yeah.
different areas of the business. What do you see that as well?
Yeah, I think honestly, we could take this conversation of personal brand and apply it to the function brand in a way, right? The
Yeah.
function brand in TA is usually just, I need talent, go get it, go make it happen. And I'm going to put this funny label called cost center on you, and I got to be the first one to say it. We're going to apply this label to you, and that comes with all this baggage of, hey, do it as cheaply as possible. You're not adding that. You're not bringing money in. You're not revenue generating. So let's just find a way to make you as small as possible. Let's extract value. Let's squeeze the lemon as hard as we can to get the juice out of it. But really, we're not going to see the value. And I think that's really what we're talking about is the more you can show your personal brand, it reinforces the function brand, and it helps you get that chance to tell leadership, we're not a cost center. We are actually driving value for the company. We're not just doing it quietly. We're doing it obviously if people would have eyes to see it, right? If you need the people to ideate the product and build the product and service the product and bill for the product and sell the product, guess what? All those people came from TA. All those people were people you sourced or attracted or generated. And if you can't describe and talk about that kind of work in a value add format, you will be continued to be pigeonholed in the cost center function and find your days and lives to be very, very frustrated and stressful. And I think if we boiled it down to, if we had a nugget for the entire project of what we're doing here, that is the crux of it. How do you show the value you're bringing to the table so that the company can value you better?
Yeah, I love the way you just positioned that, actually. So we've put this document together. There's 9 tangible tactical sections to it. Like, we've tried to make a step by step and also make sure there's something in there for everyone. So if somebody's already thinking strategically, but they're looking for some tactics, then, there's something in there, and sort of vice versa in terms of where do I start and that kind of stuff. But before, and we can't cover all of that
Yeah.
in one episode. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in future conversations. But for you, if we think about personal brand strategy, how do
Mm.
you sum that up? The difference between sort of showing up every day and just doing your best versus having a plan and, a bit of a longer sort of view of what you're trying to achieve.
It's a great question. I think strategy is the right word. I think to
Mm,
me, a brand is a system. Not in that it's a machine that you build. It's a thing that as you use it, it becomes better and you can get more out of it. You call it a flywheel, call it a snowball effect, whatever. It's a system because as you can't solve it in a day, you can't solve it in a project, you
mm,
can't check a box and call it done. But every day you invest in it, you become better at it and can reap or bigger yields from it. You can drive bigger value from it. It is a little bit like going to the gym. You go once and you go for an hour, good for you, you're sweaty. But if you go every day for 20 minutes, you can really build muscles. You can really change your body. You can change how you're perceived. You can change how you perceive yourself. So it is not about how do you build things. It's about how does the longitudinal building of things allow you to build grander things, bigger things, more valuable things, more important parts of it, so that when you see your own personal brand, don't go, oh, it's bad, I did the thing, it didn't get much better. Don't be done. That's the step one. That's just step one of a longer journey, and because that's really how brands work. But that's kind of just
yeah.
kind of my perception. How do you think about it? What is a good brand strategy for a TA leader looking to kind of influence?
Yeah, I love the idea of a flywheel, and I think you're exactly right, because there's lots of things that you could do on a daily basis that come under the heading of personal brand. For me, if we're going to say you are operating strategically, it all comes down to this: what does success look like in your specific environment? What do I mean by that? Okay, what are the obstacles in your way? What are you trying to achieve? What does success look like? And this is where there needs to be a real sort of analytical, maybe even self-reflective view of, what traits are most valued by the company that you're aligned and comfortable with that actually would be a really light lift to dial up? And what difference would that make on a daily, monthly, annual basis? And
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I remember speaking to a TA leader recently at one of these roundtable retreat things. Great excuse to drink really expensive wine and figure out what's going on and all the rest of it. But someone was telling me they went in for a personal review, like a sort of an appraisal kind of thing, and they got some really interesting feedback that shocked them. They were told that they were too nice, to the point where they don't think that they were giving
Mhm.
objective feedback. And I was like, "Well, that's interesting." Like, so what are you going to do about that? And straight away, it was like, "Well, now I'm looking for opportunities to give objective feedback, and I'm punctuating it with, well, do you really want my feedback? Because it's objective." And and I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." That, because in the space of a couple of weeks, he said people had already started to comment on, "Oh, like, well, be careful what you wish for, because he will tell you exactly what he thinks." So in the space of
Yeah.
2 weeks, he'd already made headway into changing that sort of perception. I thought, huh, what a great example of something that's been called out that you can immediately work on. So you could probably think about the current culture that you're in. What values sort of personality traits or habits or behaviors seem to be valued or appreciated? How can you dial them up intentionally to further your agenda?
Yeah.
How do you decide in an intentional way um, how you're going to consistently show up and have a basic game plan as to why that's going to help you? If
Yeah.
you're going to be the generous one, if you're going to be the proactive person to reach out and make sure that you're contributing to a teammate or whatever, how is that going to add up to how people perceive you
Mhm.
in the context of your current environment with your current challenges? Because
Yeah.
and this might be something that you review on an annual basis, or however frequency suits where you're at. And then you know the other bit to that is, what competencies, easy for me to say, do you need to be known for to get heard or get noticed or get listened to? And I
Mhm.
think that's not the whole strategy, but for me, that's a really good view of the landscape, reflecting on, what do the challenges ahead look like? What does success look like? What am I working with in terms of personal strengths and weaknesses, and making a plan that's very intentional based on those basic components to begin with. I don't know
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
I completely agree. And there are three things I want to point out to your story. First off, that person, that TA leader, had a brand. They didn't even realize it. And it took that annual
100%.
review to go, boom, I'm seen this way. And, they're being friendly. Aren't you supposed to be friendly? They're doing what they think they're supposed to. So step one is you have a brand. Step two is it doesn't have to be a lot. Once you have a clear brand, and once you have a clear way in which you want to change it, i.e., I don't want to be seen as nice, I want to be seen as honest, it doesn't take a lot to move that needle, to make that shift happen to the point where people are talking about it. It's got to be a perpetual thing. It's got to be a long-term thing, but don't think in terms of years. You can see impacts in fairly short orders, provided you know where you are and you know where you want to take this. Third, I thought, and I think it was kind of an off the cuff comment, be careful what you wish for. I think that is so telling, because every brand, and we are branders, so we know this to be true on our DNA level,
Mm.
is both good and it is both bad at the same time. There's no such thing as a perfect
Mm.
brand. If you are known for being nice, people might like you, but it also means people may not see you as giving honest and objective feedback. If people think you're a little salty, they might appreciate the honesty. They may not want to confide in you when they're having a bad day. There's pros and cons to every single brand. So do not think that there is some sort of key you unlock and suddenly you are better. This is all about
Yeah.
saying, who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be seen? What is it going to take to get there? And do I appreciate the cons and the baggage that come with any decision I make there.
Yeah. How do you, I think that's really good advice, and also it sort of makes me double down on the idea of you need to really understand the landscape and the environment and the
Thousand
the
percent.
culture around you. Um, One really interesting thing here at this point is, where's the line with who you are authentically,
Mm.
and then deciding, well, actually, I need to show up differently. How do you wrestle with that one?
Yeah, wrestling's the right word. I'll take a page out of Seth Godin, Uncle Seth. We all read Seth Godin stuff. He talks about, look, you're going for surgery and your surgeon just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. You don't want them coming with their full authentic self. What they're doing is they've made you a promise as to what they're doing. They're going to help you. That is what you want. You don't want true authenticity. You don't need to know what they ate for lunch. You don't need to know that they're having a good day or bad day necessarily. Everybody has stuff in their heads. Work is a place in which we come to solve problems. And what we're talking about is, what is the manner in which you solve those problems? Now, that opens the door for, do I say that I'm gay? Do I say that I'm trans? Do I say that I'm insert potentially concerning or potentially, open to interpretation? There's
Controversial.
yeah. There's something where you're like, I don't know. Look, let's be fair. If I'm gay and there's certain companies, I would never, ever let that out. And there are certain companies where I'd be like, totally fine, because nobody cares. And it's good to know that organization, and you still make decisions. And I know for a fact that there are gay people in very conservative organizations making an impact, because the company says, we're not particularly LGBTQ friendly, but they're there for the work. So that is how they present themselves. They're presenting as much as they feel safe to. So I don't want to get into a conversation of DEI, because that's where I get into trouble, because I am not an expert in
Different
any way,
rabbit
shape, or
hole.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I think we could probably find some people who could talk about it. But I think it is about, what's the promise you're making? What do you want? How are you solving other people's problems? That's really what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of what we've talked about already is, you've got to show up, but you've got to be super aware of where you're showing up, and that personal brand needs to be fit for purpose. So that's,
Yeah.
there's some tailoring, and there's some
Decisions.
um, decisions and intelligence and sort of planning and strategy that needs to go into that, which is why we haven't said it's just a 12-step plan. Do this, do this, do that.
Yeah, no, it's not.
That said, there probably
Let's
are
get into it.
some universal truths and some sort of tactics that everybody can do. So again, we can't go through the whole 12 areas of
Yeah,
the
give me
document we
your
put
top
together with
three.
James. But
Yeah, give me your top
yeah,
three of what
so
you think people should be doing.
all right, well, I'll go first, and then see what you think. What's at the top of your list? So I think personally, I think building real, authentic relationships with key stakeholders needs to be on the radar and near the top of a success criterion for me. So this might be hiring managers, team leaders. It could be some of the influencers that are in the trenches, like key recruiters, and then disparately across the organization, people running departments who have pain, and
Yeah.
and maybe budget as well. Um, People who, there's always somebody in the organization that knows what's going on. Um, Building real, authentic relationships where there's a two-way value exchange, and it's like an admiration and respect, and you figured out how to communicate with those people in their language, with the priorities and preferences that are top of their list. I would say that's a tactic that you can intentionally make a game plan for. So I'd put that
Yeah.
number one for me.
I think
What's
mine
top of your
overlaps.
list?
Yeah, mine overlaps like almost perfectly, except to say, those relationships do not happen in a group. Those relationships are
Mm,
generally started and built one-on-one. And I think
yeah.
one of the things that TA leaders have an opportunity to do is to build more one-on-one relationships based on their role, based on how they do it. They just have to lean into it. That one-on-one
Mm,
about talent intake, or about talent strategy, or expectations for next quarter, expectations for next year, those are generally one-on-one meetings. And it's not just about what's on the agenda. This is the place to say, how am I going to understand how I'm seen and help influence how I want to be seen. Yes, you're going to do stuff on a stage, you're going to do stuff in mass emails, you're going to do stuff in groups, but honestly, the relationships are all about one-on-one. And no matter how big the company is, one-on-one really is where you plant that flag.
So this is more than just about making people like you as well, because actually they need to value what you're doing and what you're bringing. So
Mhm.
what's a good example? What's a good example of that? Because, delivering bums on seats or, whatever, I would say isn't a good example of that. What's a better
Yeah.
example?
Yeah. I think, I'm thinking of a TA leader who I know when she showed up, there was a question of how does the system work? That everybody viewed TA as this machine, and it just kind of grinded through and did what it did. And what she started to do was have these one-on-one questions, and she came with bigger questions. She came with better questions. She came with more challenging questions. Questions like, how do you value your new hire? Does it have to be just about the skills they bring to the table? Would you want someone who is aligned to the culture versus someone who is less aligned? What matters more? A perfect fit that you have to wait 6 more months for, or a good enough candidate that you need right now? And I think just by asking those questions, she was effectively re-scoping and re-sketching how she wanted her and her team to be seen. Because suddenly they're not just order takers, they're asking deeper
Mm.
questions that tied to not just what the hiring manager needed, but what the business needed, how the company was working, that it wasn't in this vacuum, it wasn't being seen through a drinking straw, but that she saw the bigger picture, the entirety of the company. And by serving individual hiring managers, she was serving this larger goal. And I think as she showed up and asked those questions, she changed her brand fairly quickly.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know how relevant this is at all, but it makes me think about Liverpool Football Club, the greatest football team in the world, right?
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's a fact. It's just an absolute truth. So one of the reasons why they became the greatest football team of all time in the 70s and 80s was they worked on the basics of pass and move. So they got the basic passes to and from each player absolutely nailed in training. However, they didn't just work on their pass to a player. They were smart enough to figure out that every player likes to receive the ball differently, whether it's on the left foot, the right foot, slightly behind, slightly in front, make them run for it and all that. And by understanding their teammate at that level, in the moments of absolute milliseconds of a game at high pace, they were putting the ball where the teammate wanted it and making them look great. And just those marginal gains made all of the difference, and it won trophies and championships, which is why they're the best. And listening to what you're saying is building relationships one on one. The more insight that you have on how your peers like to receive the ball, what they appreciate in terms of a contribution from you as a
Yep.
peer, those little things are going to make a huge difference. And it might just be the difference between who do I go to ask this question, or who do I trust the most, or who do I think has got my back, or all of those things. And if you take the time to really listen and build those relationships, I think it's that type of benefit that you get. How's that for an analogy? Did that work?
Well, when we get back from soccer football highlights, we'll return to peoplemba. So look, in interest of
Uh,
time, we got you. I know you have two more tactics you want to share. Let's speed round them a bit because I've got two more as well.
so the next one for me is if you're doing great work, you're getting great results, or you've had ideas, or you've tested something that works and all the rest of it, is to share those insights consistently, both internally to bang that drum and demonstrate that you know what you're talking about and elevate your position internally, but also on LinkedIn to
Yeah,
increase your influence externally as an expert. Now, this is very tactical, but if you can flex that muscle and get into a routine of looking for some value on a regular basis to share, that will be noticed, it will be appreciated, and you will be
1000%.
associated with smart insights that are moving the industry and your organization forward.
Exactly. And I think, that means, connecting with people inside your company on LinkedIn, building those networks so they
Yeah.
can see that, so they can see your smart thinking and to slowly shape what expectations around talent acquisition can and should be. It's one thing for you to say it to them. I think it should be this, which is personal and it's agenda driven. It's another thing for you to stand on the proverbial mountaintop and shout it to the world that says, this is a point of view. This is a strategy. This is a
Mm.
philosophical advantage of way of doing this work that gets seen. And when you say it from the mountaintop, as it were, people see you as being more courageous. They see you as being more open to thought. They see you as seeing a bigger horizon, which cannot help but serve you. My
Mm.
next tactic is going to be, and this is super tactical, you got to go to other people's meetings. I loved when I was an employer branding leader, I loved showing up to other people's team meetings, their weekly stand-ups or whatever it was. When you show up to other people's meetings, one, it shows that you care about what they care about, but two, it helps you understand what their challenges are so that when the next time you have that one-on-one, the next time you have that intake meeting, you can speak their language. You can speak to their challenges. You feel like you are seen as someone who gets it, who understands what their world is and are trying to actively help it.
So there's this phrase which haunts me is
Oh
a
boy,
meeting tourist. So some
there's that.
people go to a lot of meetings and they are literally just there and time passes by, they add no value whatsoever and all the rest of it. So I can see the benefit of exposure, awareness, and all the rest of it, but surely that's got to be balanced with you've either got to bring value or
Mhm.
justify why you're there, or
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you position that?
I think at the end of every meeting, as you're taking notes, you go back to your laptop, you're back to your computer, and you say, hey, thanks for letting me here. Thanks for letting me sit in. I heard this, this, this. Here are 3 things I think we could be doing to start to solve some problems. You are now proactively saying, I heard you. I understand your
Mm,
challenges. And this is what I think I can bring to you. Because it's an email form, you can take a beat. You can structure that language. You can decide exactly what you want to say. Do you want to offer the
yeah.
world? Do you want to figure out how to solve their Tuesday challenge meeting, whatever it is? You can make decisions and you can frame it such that you're not just saying, I think this is right and you're wrong. It's more about, I want to offer you help that serves you as you are trying to grow. And that really
Mm,
allows you to lean into that. What's in it for me, right? It serves you,
yeah, I
but
like
this is
that.
how it also serves them. But I take your point. I think
Okay.
if you show up to meetings just for the sake of filling up 8 to 10 hours a day without having to do any work, people see that fast. Yes.
Oh, and that's a personal brand you don't want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That
Okay,
doesn't
cool.
work.
Yeah, no, I like that. All right, so if we're going for 3 tactics each, my last one's going to be, and you might say, well, this is a stretch. This might come a little bit towards the end, but anyway, I'm going to put it out there. Speaking at industry events, but I'm going to give you some caveats though, because this can actually damage your personal brand if you go about it in the wrong way. Now, I don't want to
Oh,
put people
yeah.
off this. You don't need 10 years experience to earn the right to speak on stage. What you need is something of value to share. And that doesn't necessarily mean a massive success or a new amazing sort of, reinventing the wheel sort of moment. It could be a case study and it could be a story, it could be a campaign and a review or some element of strategy that has worked or, whatever. Vulnerability is the most underrated thing on a stage in a community of TA leaders that I've ever witnessed in, getting on for 20 years. So actually talking about failure, it takes confidence to do that and it's admired. As long as you can then analyze it and be insightful about what you've learned and all the rest of it and be generous with the reflection of that. All too often people stand on stage and they preach and they teach and you think, well, okay,
Or
where's
they
the
do a
value?
book report. They do a book report. They
Yeah.
read somebody else's book and said, this is what someone else said in their own words. And you're like, well, I could read
And there's
that
a
book
lot of
too.
that, James,
There really
So
is.
just being on stage isn't enough. The other buyer beware is if you are new to the field and you've just come across something which is magic and really effective and all the rest of it, just do a little check that this isn't you finding fire for the first time. Just make sure it's going to be as new and valuable for the industry as possible, and as long as you've got self-awareness, you can never be too quick to get into these events and that kind of stuff, because it ingratiates you into a community. You start somewhere, and quite often it gives you license to speak to other speakers and other delegates who, if you do have that element of humility and self-reflection and openness, they could be your next mentor, your next coach, your next advisor, or just a
Yeah.
peer who's there to help. It will
Yeah.
infinitely further your personal brand if you go about that the right way, I think.
Yeah, somebody, and I don't remember who said it, but it's like, don't go up to a speaker, don't, whether it's being on LinkedIn or being on a stage, don't say something you learned from someplace else. Share something you did. There's so much about TA that is insular, that is hidden, that is in tiny little silos. I know that so many TA leaders only get the chance to learn when they go to conferences. So that's why they care about conferences so much. So if you're showing up, telling people what you did and how it turned out, it's data points. And it is valuable data points. Even if you didn't turn the world upside down, showing people your work, showing people what you did, showing people how it turned out is incredibly helpful. And so I completely agree that, that's how you kind of show your experience and your value and frame it so that other people see it as well. My last tactic, really quick, is simple, but at the same time, so not simple. It's the ability to take a victory lap. When you do solve a problem, when you do achieve a goal, when you do something that is impressive or people didn't think you could do, don't just do it. You have to take a victory lap. You have to walk around that office and let people know that you did it without looking like a schmuck, without looking like a jerk, without looking like a glad handing, backslapping, self-aggrandizing jerk. But you have to show the value. I know this because I haven't met a sales leader who wasn't an expert at this. And I haven't met a CFO who wasn't an expert at this. And I haven't met a CEO who didn't do this on a daily basis. If you can figure out how to do a victory lap to people who matter, they will remember that you're a winner. Remember, TA is tough to show wins, right? The metrics are tough. We can't point to a pile of money. So if you achieve something and you do something, it is 1000% on you to point to it and show not just that you did it, but how does it bring value to the company? That is a hard skill to learn, but it's worth mastering.
The impact it's made. So it's a good opportunity to show the correlation of the things that you've done and the things that it's changed and improved. Yeah, I really like that. And I guess the other sort of little opportunity there is, if it's the humble brag side of things, you're looking for some gratitude of those around you, or people, maybe it's sort of people in your team and it's a team thing, and you just get to sort of really champion your team and show gratitude. Then I think that's always a win-win there as well. Yeah, I love that. There's a TA leader I know really well, and he's super sneaky at this. And whenever they go live with campaigns that they're really proud of, he creates a micro campaign that only has a small list of all of his leaders in that campaign. And he spends a micro budget, but he markets to them directly. And he always gets the same reaction. It's like, do you know what? I keep seeing that campaign everywhere. It's amazing. We're everywhere. This is awesome, But he just wants to make sure those leaders, those influencers see the great work that's being done. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I love it. All right. Well, let's wrap up. What is something of this list of 9 and our things, and what's something you would recommend people do tomorrow? Let's not make this a big idea. Let's make this incredibly tactical. What should a TA leader be thinking about tomorrow to start to build their personal brand?
So if it was me and it started tomorrow, I would start speaking to the leaders and senior peers around and just start asking questions of, hey, what's going on? What's important? What's keeping you up at night? And all the rest of it. Get a good idea of the landscape. And then find some friendlies who you can sit down and buy them lunch and ask them some really honest questions and about yourself, how you show up, how you're perceived, and try and get a little bit of a 360 as to your own perception and all the rest of it. If that doesn't give you the impetus to go home that very night and make a plan, I don't know what will, because there's going to be some good, bad, and ugly in there. But, having the impetus to build a strategic personal brand strategy with intention, for me, that's where it's got to start.
Well, look, there's so much in this download that we didn't touch. So be sure to check it out. Think of it as a cheat sheet. Think of it as a guide to ensure that you go from this is a good idea to how you live your personal, professional life every single day. So if you want to make your personal brand matter, if you want to build it, if you want to leverage it, go to peoplemba.com, sign up and subscribe, and you will find the library of all the documents. If you subscribe, you're going to get an email telling you every new document. By the way, it should be about every week or so, because we have so much good stuff baked and ready for you. This is literally episode 1, and we happen to know where this is going. And it's like, don't spoil the surprise. Don't tell them that the butler did it, right? Do not cut to the end. There's so much stuff going. So please subscribe to peoplemba.com, or subscribe to us and, or, as well. Why not both? Subscribe to us on YouTube and get this information on a weekly basis. We've got a lot more stuff coming. Oh, and don't forget, if you go to our website, you can leave us a voicemail. So if you've got a challenge, you've got a situation, you have a question, just click on the voicemail link and leave us a voicemail. You may get featured on a future episode of the podcast. So, Brian, thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for sharing the wisdom about personal brand. This is actually a subject you thought we should start with. And having done this now, you were 100% right. This is a great starting point for helping talent leaders kind of find that seat at the table. So this is a great kickoff.
Well, James, I think your personal brand of the one who says it all has just been proven once again. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see the feedback and questions that come from this. And great first episode. I'm sending you a virtual high five, mate.
I'm sending it right back. Thanks so much. Boom. There it is. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next week.
If you're hearing this, you're probably asleep. So this is your subliminal message to subscribe to the People MBA at peoplemba.com and share it with someone you'd like to impress. Do you think that's really Brian's real accent? These are the things that keep me up at night.